The damning report on the circumstances surrounding the deaths of mentally ill patients in Gauteng is finally public, and Gauteng Health MEC Qedani Mahlangu was the first to fall on her sword, with more casualties expected. Health Ombuds Professor Malekapuru Makgoba, his meticulous report would lead to further scrutiny on the involvement of implicated parties. Now, joining us on the debate, and of course we ask, is this the tip of the rot in the public healthcare sector? We're joined by Tsepo Mokgarenyane Nahao, Gauteng Provincial Secretary. On the phone line, Sizwe Pamla, COSATU spokesperson, and Jack Bloom, DA spokesperson for health. To all of you, thanks so much for joining us. You at home, the lines are open on 011-542-2186. Just getting your reaction, Mr. Bloom, on the resignation of Gauteng MEC for Health. Some saying that this is a slap in the face, considering that she's essentially divorcing herself from any personal or civil responsibility, saying that she'll take accountability in her political deployment, so to speak.
Has to go. In fact, she should have been fired by the Premier last year. But I think this is not the end of the story. I think that criminal charges should be laid depending on the evidence, and certainly she can't escape just by resigning. I'm pleased that she resigned altogether from the legislature, so she's no longer in politics. But really, accountability doesn't stop there. And I think there will be further charges laid against her and against everybody who is accountable.
Pamela, please stay on the line, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Pamela, just with the other implicated parties, primarily the MEC who's now resigned, the head of department, Dr. Silebano, and Dr. Manamela as well. We haven't heard any reaction or response, rather, from those two parties. Is there still a level of denialism as to the facts in the sense of the intensity of this particular issue, and that more heads need to roll and that people need to be held accountable? Do you think there's a level of denialism and protection that is leveled to the implicated parties?
Well, yes, indeed. We do believe that the provincial administration needs to clean house in that department. It is worrying that we are looking at 94 psychiatric patients, but the report tells us that actually the number could be higher. So we really do need to see some shake-up happening in the department, because not only did they just literally dump and abandon these patients, they never did any follow-up to monitor these NGOs, having failed to vet them and find whether they were properly registered or licensed or not. So as COSATU, we do hope that the ANC-led provincial administration will send a clear message to the people of Gauteng that the organization as a leader of society, it is prepared to really regain the trust of society by cleaning house. We can't tolerate incompetence and negligence of this magnitude.
All right, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We do have a caller, Grant in Rhodoport. Good evening to you. What's your experience or contribution to this matter?
You know, Cindy, good evening, and good evening to the viewers. You know, I watched the press conference, and, you know, I can't help but feel that I want to cry. Because the people there show no emotion. And this is one of the worst tragedies that ever happened in our country. And they are just normal, and it's business as usual. They didn't show no emotion. They don't care. I am so outraged by this incident that I think everybody, including the Minister of Health, should be prosecuted for those people's deaths. Because they have a press conference, there's no emotion there. It's just, these 94 people don't count. Maybe because they're black, I don't know. But in my life, they count. And they are my fellow citizens, and I'm outraged, Cindy. I'm outraged. Yeah. Thank you.
No. Thanks so much for that, Grant. And Mr. Bloom, do you feel that the whole issue was just dealt with the insensitivity for the mere fact that the former MEC of Health herself wasn't present, and it was dealt with very clinically in terms of what retribution, at least, that the families deserve?
Well, I absolutely agree, because in fact, when the MEC first announced the initial 36 deaths, she did so very coldly. She didn't display any sensitivity, and I think that if she had displayed the correct sensitivity at the time, she would have resigned, and we would have rectified the situation then. But between the time that she admitted the initial number of deaths, a number of other patients died, and in fact she lied to the Gauteng legislature when I asked about the number of deaths. She said there were 36, and the health ombudsman says that in fact there were 77, and then by the end of the year 94 patients had died. Now, if she had had the sensitivity all along, these deaths wouldn't have happened, and we would have had faster intervention by the Premier, in fact, because it's just, I don't know, it's absolutely shocking. I think we're all trying to absorb the fact that there were so many deaths of the most vulnerable people. In fact, the health ombudsman, he called it silent deaths because, these are people who can't cry out. And I think there's silent suffering happening now, that these patients, in fact, need to be moved from the NGOs to other health facilities, and we could have avoided all this if the Gauteng Health Department had compassion and care, which obviously they didn't have. So unfortunately, this is how this terrible tragedy happened.
All right, Mr. Bloem, thanks so much for your time. We're going to allow callers to also share their experiences as we try to uncover the depth or the extent of the rot in this particular matter. Mr. Pamela, the opportunity to regain trust is already lost, in the sense that there's a trust deficit, all sorts of criticism leveled at the Department of Health, particularly in Gauteng. There are civil cases that are piling up. So in cleaning up, it's all good and well to issue a statement that, there will be heads rolling or political interventions will be done. We're talking about 94 families and still counting that have lost their loved ones. And it's as if their lives have been cheapened because of their medical condition. What is your view in how a government should expedite the process of dealing with this matter?
Well, for us as COSAT, we understand that health is a provincial competence, but we also want answers from the national department. They need to explain their own failures and account for their inaction, because this breakdown of the health system is as a result of the national department failing to put policies, strategies, plans and guidelines for provinces on how to deal with mentally ill patients in this country. All provinces are doing what they think where. But when you have a national department that is entrusted with the responsibility of formulating policies and guidelines for the provinces, a question has to be asked whether the national minister himself should not do the right thing by stepping down, and also some senior bureaucrats in the health department. We had a commission of inquiry over Marikana. It was a set budget for this country. Yet today, we are talking about almost double the number of people who died in Marikana. So we really need to clean house from the national and provincial department, because national department has done very little by way of actually guiding what these provinces should be doing in dealing with the serious issue of taking care of mentally ill patients in this country.
So much for your time. Brenda, you're holding on from Emalahleni. Good evening to you. And what is your perspective, question or comment? We've lost Brenda there, but in studio we have Tsepo Mokgerenyane, the Gauteng Provincial Secretary. Ray Mokgerenyane, thanks so much for your time. From the Health Workers Union, in terms of the systematic problems that have been occurring in the public health care sector, why has this situation been perpetuated for this long without members crying out of conditions of particularly mentally ill patients?
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. I must say that as a union, we did engage both the MEC and the HOD about the situation prevailing in mental health institutions. At the point they initiated this termination of the contract, our worry as a union at that point was mainly about workers who were going to be affected by that termination. And at that time, there were 373 workers who were employed by Life Acid who had to be retrenched as a result of the termination. I must say that we did not receive information which suggested that those patients, upon termination of the contract, would be transferred to NGOs, as indicated in the Health Ombudsman's report. But we did engage the department about that, and it's unfortunate that it had to come to this particular stage.
But as a material stakeholder in the value chain in the health sector, do you think that the union could have done more in the sense of putting pressure on the health department in Gauteng and to ensure that at least the living conditions for mentally ill patients are supervised? Because clearly in the department there's been a lack of oversight in dealing with that.
Yeah, I must confess that we could have done more. We did try as a union. It's unfortunate that we were dealing with management that was not prepared to listen to us. As things stand, the department has also issued a notice which imposes a moratorium on the appointments on funded vacant posts. Our fear is that also can lead to another silent genocide, which may not be publicized as this one has been. That's our main challenge. But we are hopeful that the new people who will take over the department will be prepared to listen to us as labor so that we work together in dealing with situations such as this one.
Or are you of the view that it's indicative of the level of arrogance from management, as you're saying, and the former MEC in not seeing the glaring truth, for that matter, even fudging figures to say that, 36 at the time had died. In her resignation, she goes on to say she initiated the investigation into the Health Ombudsman's report and will not take any other accountability instead of political responsibility.
Yeah, it's arrogance of alarming proportions, I must say, because the expectation is that you know that as a deployee, you know that the buck stops with you and you should take responsibility for occurrences such as the death of 94. We normally say one death is one too many. 94 is far too much, and the department should have been sensitive enough. We must say that we appreciate the intervention by the Premier, the promptness and the decisiveness with which he's dealing with issues of consequence management to deal with those who are negligent in the process of dealing with this situation.
We joined on the line Ma'am Yvonne, who lost a son. In this case, Ma'am Yvonne, our condolences to you. I don't even know if words can describe or how to even put it to you that in one case, I suppose the report also shows the extent of the suffering of mentally ill patients, and on the other hand, the accountability from the chief authorities. Is this for you the beginning of a healing process, or are there more questions than answers?
Come again, sir. Ma'am, do you see my child was mentally ill, or what are you trying to say?
Yeah, I'm saying that, do you feel that this, for you, is the beginning of a healing process just in the developments in this particular case? Ma'am Yvonne?
I don't know. What I can tell you, maybe I misunderstand you, but what I know is that my child was referred from Esidimeni to Takalani. At Takalani stayed only 4 days. After, on the 5th day, it's when I got a call that he's been taken to, he has started collapsing. The question I asked them was, what did you do to him? Because he was more than 5 days, he didn't get any epilepsy. Only to find out that, as the professor has said, he have neglected him, dehydrated, and he was eating. Because on the day I was going to fetch the corpse at the hospital, I'm still repeating it, on the right side, his eyes was covered with something so-called mud. I can say it's mud, whether it was black or not, but it was chocolate brown. When I asked them the question, what did they do to my son? They say it was the, how do they call it? Fluid of what? What did they mean? Fluid of what? Did they over-inject him or what? Or did he fell? The blood came out, he got injured somewhere in the scalp or what? Even now, I don't have the answer. The answer I've got is that what they rather, they say it's a natural death. Natural death, how? Because he died at the hospital. If it was natural death, maybe she should have died at Takalani.
Yeah, Mama Yvonne, for you, I mean, closure, obviously, as I said, there's more questions than answers. This is only the beginning of the investigation process. But does the report give you a sense of comfort that justice will be done for your loss?
Never counseling. I've never received counseling.
So you have never had, no support so far, seeing the resignation of the MEC?
The help I've got is only from Section 27, but from the side of government, absolutely nothing.
And what would it take, Mam Yvonne, for you to see justice being served? Obviously, it's going to be a long and difficult road for you and your family and so many others. What would it take, even as a society, in terms of support, I guess, to ensure that justice is done?
I can't answer it. I can't take decision being alone. I've got to go back to Section 21 and ask them some questions so that they should put me on light, because I've got no idea of what the follow-ups I must be.
All right, sir.
Because that man was talking about he has never done medicine. Today he stands there in front of us coming to tell us about section what. We shouldn't understand. We shouldn't have idea of what he was talking about. Mutually.
Yeah, Mam Yvonne, just please stay on the line. We also have in studio Re Mokherenyane. He is the Nahau Gauteng Provincial Secretary, and I'm sure many families feel helpless, in terms of what to do next. There'll probably be a class action, a lot of litigation, but the department in itself is technically bankrupt. As I mentioned, a number of cases that they face. It's still going to be a long and difficult road. What is your, I suppose, words of encouragement for these families?
Yeah, maybe as a union, it's important that we convey our condolences to all the families who lost their loved ones. And I must also indicate that indeed the litigation process can be very tedious, especially for families who've lost loved ones. We'll also meet as a union to reflect on what has prevailed and the Health Ombudsman's report and decide on the way forward on how best to assist the families who've lost their loved ones, and working together with the department to improve services to the Gauteng community.
Yeah, we have a caller on the line, Ahmad Modzowe, who's also bereaved in this case. Thanks so much for joining us. If you can just briefly share with us your journey to the culmination of the report on the silent deaths, as it's referred to. How do you respond to the MEC resigning, and what are your views in terms of the report when it comes to serving justice going forward?
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay. The MEC resigning. That's an understatement. I don't understand why is she resigning. If she's running away from her own responsibilities, because we spoke to her, to the MECs. We as families, we spoke to her, and she ignored our call. So now, if she is resigning, I'm getting confused. Someone must be held liable, so I'm not sure how is she going to be held responsible why she resigned.
Yeah. It's very little consolation, I suppose, with the report, but something is being done to ensure that your loss is not in vain. Do you, the healing process in itself, do you think that this is a step in the right direction? It may be a long and difficult road going forward.
It's drowning me, as it is. Hearing of this issue being discussed again, it's drowning and it's opening wounds. it's opening them up again. It's like it's like I was told just now that my mom is passed on.
I'm so sorry for your loss, Maud Motsware, who lost her mother, and earlier Mum Yvonne as well, sharing her story. But Retsepo Mokorinyane, thanks so much for also joining us. It's something that is a developing story that we'll follow very closely.